In this video, I'm going to show you guys how I grew this beautiful and lush clover plot that you see behind me, and I did it all without using any herbicide. So for those of you that have been following my channel for a little while now, you guys know that I'm always looking for ways to reduce or possibly eliminate altogether the use of herbicide. I'm not totally against it. I've used it periodically out here on my plot over the past few years. Got some switchgrass established, and then I've even used it in areas where grass gets a little bit out of control, or I'm trying to plant other things, but it's always very sparingly and very minimal. It's one of those things where I just thought if there's one more variable I can take off the table, why not try? So that's what we're going to go over here with this clover that you see behind me. I relied on mechanical tillage essentially for my weed control, and it all started last summer. So last summer, this was actually an old winter rye plot. That would have been fall of 2023. And then carrying into summer of 24, it was rye. I ended up terminating that rye and getting rid of it. And then I used my ATV disc to work up the soil. The nice thing about working up the soil in the later part of your growing season, that's mid-July to late July or even early August, is when you terminate those grasses and terminate those weeds, they're on the downward arc of their summertime growth cycle. A lot of your summertime grasses and weeds have seeded out and headed out. And if you want to terminate those if you can, mow them, disc them, spray them, whatever you're going to do for your method of weed control. You can do that before they lay their seeds all over the ground or spread their seeds all over the ground. That's the ideal scenario. But when you disc this plot in mid to late summer like that, you don't get that vigorous flush of regrowth on your grasses and weeds. So that's what I took advantage of last summer. And I used mechanical tillage. Like I said, I just disked this all under after it was rye. Had a nice thatch layer on there. I was able to incorporate into the topsoil for some organic matter. And then I came in with a forage oat crop here last fall. And that forage oat crop actually worked really well. It was an incredible whitetail attraction. I made a couple videos on that and showing you guys how that works. Ended up shooting a beautiful 8-point buck out here with my bow last fall. So it was really just a magical season, and I think the forage oats played a big part of that. And the cool part about planting part of your plot into forage oats, or any cereal grain for that matter, could be cereal rye, and I know some guys do winter wheat, but you can plant this clover along with it. And so that's what I did last fall. When I got my oat crop down, I just went over the top with some clover seed, and this is what it came back like this summer now, summer of 25. So how this works is, again, I work my soil. I know the no-till guys out there are going to say, you're crazy, you should never do that, but that's what I do, and it's okay. I can grow great crops that way and reduce the amount of herbicide use on my property. So I disc it, and then what I did is after I disked it, you have quite a few clumps and furrows from your discs out here. Then I ran my oat seeds out, okay? And then I took my spring tooth tine drag and I drug over the oat seed. Your oat and your winter rye seeds are very large seeds. I really like some soil cover over mine. That also plays into my thesis or my worldview on why I'm okay with a little bit of tillage or disking on my property, is because my soils are very sandy. And I want that little bit of soil cover on my seeds, especially a large seed like an oat or a winter rye seed. So I disc it, I spread my oat seeds, I tine drag it to get that little bit of soil cover, 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch of soil cover over my oat seeds. Then after I've drug it with a spring tooth tine drag, then I went over the top of this whole thing with my clover seed at about 6 pounds per acre. And I used a really nice blend that I just picked up from my local co-op here in town. They sell it in bins, and you can just kind of scoop out of the bins and pick what you like. I like the White Dutch, the Ladino, Alsike, Red Clover. I just kind of use all of it and mix it all in. Most of them are perennials, but some of them are annuals. So do your research on that if you are thinking of planting a mix of clover. But all the food plot seed companies out there sell clover blends. I've never had a bad one, to be totally honest. I've bought all the brassica and clover seed blends at your local hardware store and local sporting goods store. The ones with the big buck and the big bright colored bags and the big buck head on the bag. I've bought all those, and they all work. I can't say I've ever really had a failed batch of seeds from any of those bright, colorful bags you get at the sporting goods store, the little jugs, you know. So I think it all works, to be totally honest. It's just kind of whatever your preference is on where you want to get your seed. But so you spread that clover seed after you've drug it with the tine drag, then you cultipack. That's what I did in my case here. Now, your soils are clay soils, or you're in the southern part of the country, or we could come up with all sorts of different scenarios, but that's what's worked really well for me up here in north central Minnesota with really sandy soils. So last fall then, as we headed into the fall, and just to back up one step, I planted my oats last year. Looking back at my notes, I think I planted August 10th, if I'm recalling offhand. I plant my cereal grains a little bit earlier up here. We get our first frost date pretty early where I'm at, up in the northern parts of Minnesota. So for the rest of the country, you guys are probably planting late August, Labor Day weekend, kind of that time range, and you can play with it. Even a lot of guys around me up here will plant their cereal grains in September, like Labor Day weekend or even later. I personally don't like waiting that long. I want a lot of green tonnage on my cereal grain plots, so I tend to plant in that kind of mid-August time frame. I want those plants time to establish a lot of tonnage that I can carry into the fall. If I plant Labor Day weekend or later on my cereal grains, the deer will have this, there's such heavy browse pressure here, they'll mow it down and we'll be down to the dirt, down in the mud here in September and October if I wait that long to plant it. So I need to get mine in the ground mid-August. So something you should play with and kind of see what works well in your area. So that was kind of the summer planting strategy, the late summer or fall planting strategy I used with my forage oats as a nurse crop. The clover was rooting in underneath it. Now this spring, this clover just exploded out of the ground because it already had those root rhizomes set last fall. So this spring, they just jumped out of the ground. And I did come out and frost seed this in March. Once most of our snow had melted, I hit it with another 3 pounds per acre of clover seed, which worked really well. I mean, I've got a really thick, beautiful stand of clover here. The deer are already pounding it. They've kind of been pounding it all summer. And all I've done is come out here and mowed this 2 times this summer. And I can see I'm starting to get a bunch of white clover heads again, so I should probably come mow it a 3rd time now, and that'll kind of freshen it up here going into the archery season. So that was the process I used. I didn't have to use any herbicide this way. And just to talk a little bit more about herbicide use, kind of the 2 traditional methods of controlling weeds are either through mechanical tillage like tilling or disking, or through herbicide use. And those are kind of your 2 options for the most part. Some guys will say there's a door number 3 with roller crimping, where you don't have to till and you don't have to use herbicide, but I've actually tried that for 2 years and I've gotten the basics of roller crimping to work, but I still struggle with weed competition when I just roller crimp. And so I think a lot of those people who are saying you can roller crimp to control weeds, they're not telling you the whole story. And I've even talked to some people who've done it at a recreational level on food plots, and then even at an ag farming scale. And I was able to get both of them to admit that even when they're using roller crimping, they're still using herbicide and chemical control on their fields. So it's hard to get away from that herbicide entirely. And like I said, I mean, I've used it out here sparingly from time to time. And sometimes you have to. Sometimes you just got to set all those grasses and weeds back just to claw your way out of it. But the nice thing about this clover is, I disked this last summer, which was summer of 2024, going into the fall of 2024. I hunted over to the forage oats, worked great. Summer of 2025, this clover came back, have not tilled it. I just mowed it a couple times. I have a beautiful plot that I'll carry into this fall of 25. And then I'll leave this clover, it'll come back spring of 26, and I'll leave it all summer of 26, and then I'll just till it under when I'm ready to plant my fall food plot next year, which is fall of 26. So if you stayed with me there, that's 2 full years I'm gonna be able to leave this clover in the ground without tilling my ground. So you could call that a low till method. And we could sit and argue about no till and disking this and tilling that and herbicide this, and everybody will make their own points, and everybody's got good points on this topic. But For myself personally, I like some minimal tillage. If it means I have to use less herbicide. And if I can stretch it to every 2 years and then rotate this to another part of my plot, you know, next year I could have rye chase this spot, chase the clover, and then I could move my clover over to another part of my plot and then let that sit untilled for 2 years. That's better than tilling it and disking it twice a summer, for example, or 5 times a summer, for example, like some guys do. You might be wondering, why wouldn't I just leave this clover here for 4 or 5 years straight? There's 2 reasons for that. The first is the quality of this clover is going to decline every year with grass competition coming in. I think the lushness and density and cleanliness of this clover plot is going to decline over time. Now you can use clethodim and different sprays, and that's maybe another video, but that's the first reason, is the quality and attraction level is going to decline. And the second reason is it becomes more and more root bound every year that goes by. And I don't want this to get such root bound sod that my disking or tilling equipment can't break it up and till it in the future. So those are the 2 reasons why I'm only going to let this clover go a maximum of 2 growing seasons. Then I'm going to terminate it, set it back, and I'll rotate a different crop in here. So hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something. If so, do me a favor and drop me a like. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll catch you guys on the next video.